football is something that can unite communities and people. And I just saw Henri, wow.
I read a very good story about you, Piers Morgan, and Hector Bellerin.
Hector Bellerin. Well, he came over to me, actually. He's got good politics, Hector's very good politics. Morgan appears. He's quite rude. Interrupts us, goes over to Bellerin and said, what do you think about Wenger? Don't you think it's time for him to go? So we then moved into a discussion about football in Spanish. And Morgan then gets more and more agitated. He says, you're freezing me out of the conversation, aren't you? I said, oh, you've noticed.
Jeremy Corbyn, welcome back to Joe and to our FootballJOE set, which is something a bit different to what our viewers may be expecting.
Nice set.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we put up some Arsenal shirts.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
No, well, we really appreciate you being here. Before we dive into football chat, because today we want to talk a bit about politics, a bit about football.
Yeah.
Congratulations on your re-election. Given the movement towards people voting for Labour, some of the polls even suggested that it was going to be tricky for you to maintain your seat. How special was this re-election in terms of your political career?
Oh, utterly extraordinary. I fought 10 times as a Labour candidate in Islington North, and ever since 1983. And then after the party refused to allow me to even be considered as a candidate, I announced I was running as an independent, and we got phenomenal numbers of people coming to help from locally as well as from all over the country, and indeed people from all over the world. And we won, and I'm forever grateful to the people of Islington North. As far as they were concerned, it was a choice, and we ran a campaign of hope, not fear. And I'm very proud of our result.
The night that you were re-elected, you said you were looking forward to being part of history. 2 months in, how have you enjoyed seeing the new government?
Well, it's different. Half the House have never been MPs before. So there's 300 and something new MPs. The first vote in Parliament is about the two-child benefit cap. And the government decided they would make it an issue. They could have easily headed it off by saying that they were prepared to end it or so on. So, no, they wanted to have some kind of symbol of strength by forcing a vote on that and then suspending 7 Labour MPs from the Parliamentary Labour Party. I don't understand what they think they're achieving by this. This isn't going to end well.
Is it bittersweet for you not being able to be part of this Labour government that finally got the Tories out, which I'm, something that you'd have wanted for a long period of time? Is it bittersweet not being able to be at the forefront of driving that policy forward?
Obviously, I wanted us to win in 17 and 19. We came very, very close, and the 2017 result was the highest Labour vote this century. And obviously not being there and not being in government, yeah, of course. But politics isn't always just about individuals and the office they hold. It is about what you do, what you say, and how you do it.
It's absolutely true. We will get into a bit more political chat later. Let's get into Arsenal, your team. When did you become a Gunner? When did you start supporting Arsenal?
I grew up in the Midlands, and we used to go and watch Wolves because I lived just up the road from Wolverhampton in Shropshire. One of my mates' dad had a small farm, and he would take us in his Land Rover. He never came to the match. I don't know what he did. Probably went to the pub or something. Those were the days.
Oh, yeah.
So there's about 6 of us in this Land Rover sitting at the back, like bumping along. And then we get to the Wolves. And the idea of reserving a seat or buying a ticket in Iran, never heard of. So we just queue up, go through the turnstile. And sometimes you could see the game. Most times you couldn't. You're too small. You sort of look round people standing on the terraces. But it was a great atmosphere. I kind of enjoyed that. And I had a rattle and a hat, a black and old gold hat my mum made, and a scarf. And then I moved away and eventually ended up in London. And I was very active in Hornsey Labour Party. And Hornsey is, of course, equidistant between Spurs and Arsenal ground.
So you had a choice to make.
It meant that there was a home game every week for somebody. And so we'd sort of do our work in the Labour Party in the morning, leafleting or whatever it was. And then we'd sort of go to the pub and say, oh, where are we going to go now? All right, we'll give it a go. So we go to Spurs and be bored rigid. And then we go to Arsenal. It was different. But you didn't have to book seats, just went in. So
define what that different means in terms of the enjoyment view.
Well, I preferred the Arsenal Stadium and I preferred the atmosphere there. We went really because it was a collective act to do, and that is the joy of football. It brings people together to go as a collective act to watch a game, argue with each other the whole time about it. I got more into going to and supporting Arsenal when my children were very young. My eldest son, Ben, is a football coach.
Oh, nice.
Seb is also a very keen football supporter. Tommy, the youngest one, can't stand football and won't go near a football match. No way, nothing to do with it. So I took Ben and then Seb and then both of them to Arsenal a lot and then put them in the junior gunners when they were 6.
Nice.
And that got them season tickets for the new stadium. So they're forever grateful to me.
Highbury obviously holds a lot of emotions within the Arsenal fan base.
Yeah.
Keir Starmer has said he remembers the smell of horse manure and hamburgers.
Yeah, there was always horse manure outside because of the horses, and the horses were kept in stables on Blackstock Road at the back of the police station. So he may well have smelt it there from that.
Okay. Is there a game that sticks out for you? Or is there a team in particular? Because I know that you're a big Wenger fan.
Yeah, I think to me one of the most memorable was actually not at Highbury, but was at the old Wembley. This was against Brøndby. I got a terrible seat. It was like behind a pillar like this, looking like this.
Restricted view, the dreaded restricted
That's
view.
the one, yeah. Half. My sons both had clear view. I had I had this, the joy of this pillar. Nice pillar, actually, very nicely made.
I'm a Fulham fan. I'm very used to
You're used to pillars. Thierry Henry had just been signed for Arsenal. And not everybody knew Thierry Henry because they don't follow football obsessively and so on. And I just saw this guy pick up the ball, run the whole length of the pitch at sort of Usain Bolt speed and score. You thought, wow, this guy's the business. No, Thierry Henry, wow.
Arsene Wenger, legend of the game, no doubt. Now in his new kind of role in FIFA trying to dictate policy, he's not having the easiest time pushing through his 2-year World Cup plan or his new offside rule, which has been ridiculed a little bit. As someone who's also tried to dictate policy throughout your career, do you have any advice for Arsene Wenger?
Drop the 2-year World Cup thing. It's madness. It's nonsense. I don't know where he got the idea from. The point of 4 years is that you've got the intersection with regional championships, Europe, Copa America, and so on. And so he comes up with this idea of a World Cup every 2 years. No. Every 4 years, same as the Olympics, every 4 years.
Yeah.
I think on other sides of football, Wenger is really good. I don't think he ever really wanted to leave Arsenal, by the way. He made a generous fist of it on his last appearance, and he was very generous about it. He then went to FIFA. His whole idea is football development, particularly in Africa.
Yeah.
And he's done a lot of good work on that and been very supportive and all of that. And I remember he once wrote me a lovely letter. They were having a Freedom of the Borough for him in the town hall, and I couldn't go because I was going to Angola, and I took some gifts from Arsenal, footballs and things, to give to people when I was there. And then also looking at landmine victims and so on and so on. And so I wrote him a letter saying, really sorry, I can't be there, no disrespect, but I was away. And he said, you're doing something more useful than I am. And I thought, what a thoughtful guy, very interesting guy.
The aura that he carries, and speaking to people that have met him, it makes complete sense to hear you.
It wasn't there at the beginning, though. When he first arrived, he was unknown and not very popular.
Well, he famously came from Japan, didn't he? He was managing in Japan. It was
He managed Grampus 8, yeah.
It was quite a big leap for him.
All credit to the Arsenal board for sticking with him, actually.
Well, I think if you look at Tottenham now, taking a chance on what was then a Celtic manager, which for a lot of fans was not the right kind of jump. So it just shows that there are some great minds out there. And even like Brighton now, they've taken on a manager from the German second division. So yeah, there's talent everywhere.
A well-run, very clever club.
They are. They're absolutely.
You think they've come up from almost disintegrating over the new stadium stuff all those years ago. Then they built the new stadium. And then they've been very, very clever on training players and selling them on. So they've made themselves into being a very powerful club.
Just quickly on Arsene Wenger, I read a very good story about you, Piers Morgan, and Hector Bellerin discussing Arsene Wenger. Apparently, your use of Spanish came in handy to deceive.
Sí. Absolutamente. Muy importante los dos idiomas.
Yeah, yo sé. Es verdad. Sí.
Absolutely. But so what happened was we were at the G Awards. Yeah, okay. And I saw Hector Bellerin, Well, he came over to me, actually. He said,
Well, of course.
And like to have a chat with him. He's got good politics, Hector, very good politics. Good man. So he comes over. We're having a very pleasant chat in English. I'm just standing there between the tables. At which point, Morgan appears. And he's quite rude.
I don't believe it.
So he comes over, interrupts us, goes over to Bellerin and said, what do you think about Wenger? Don't you think it's time for him to go? Now, you can't ask a player what they think of a manager. They can't talk about it for obvious reasons. So Bellerin says, I can't talk about it, leave it. Well, he's got to go, hasn't he? He's utterly useless. He's destroying the club. He's destroying the team. And keeps on like, oh. So at which point, Hector says, ¿Qué pasa, Herbios? ¿Está bien? ¿Todo bien? So we then moved into a discussion about football in Spanish. And Morgan then gets more and more agitated. He says, you're freezing me out of the conversation, aren't you? I said, oh, you've noticed.
Yeah.
And he then stopped off.
I heard he then mentioned, he said something about you and Wenger being the only people to not be good at their jobs and not get fired or something like that.
That's right, yeah.
There are a lot of divisive Arsenal fans out there, particularly in Parliament as well. I'm surprised to see how many Arsenal fans you share the comments with. You got John Bercow, who I've actually seen at games, obviously.
Oh, yeah, no, John Bercow and I are great mates. We get along fine.
Nick Clegg, Arsenal fan. Obviously,
yeah, well, he's earning loads of money in California now, isn't he?
In the current crop, obviously, Sir Keir Starmer, and then James Cleverly, and Priti Patel, which I think surprised a few people to discover that she is also Ghana too.
Well, she's had a bit of a rough time recently, hasn't she? Getting oiked out of the Tory leadership race, you know. Shall I invite her to come to an Arsenal game with me, do you think, you know?
Is that the media attention you want?
Not really, though. Neither would she.
That'd be interesting to see how that would go down on the big screen at the Emirates, perhaps. Keir Starmer, if he was a football manager, what kind of qualities would you attribute to him?
To have an inscrutable face at various times, but not show much empathy.
Okay, so I'm trying to think if there's a manager over history that you could apply that to.
Many of them.
If you were going to pick a five-a-side team of MPs to represent a team that you would want to see, who would it be?
A good player was former MP Alan Simpson for Nottingham. He was very good. And the parliamentary football team, Steve Rotherham played for it as well, as did a few others. Steve Rotherham, now the mayor of Merseyside City region. The matches, they used to have a parliamentary 11. They discovered you don't have to be an MP to play in the team. You have to have, I think, half the team have got to be MPs.
Okay.
And so Steve Rotherham comes over to me one night. He says, "Yeah, your boy Ben, is he good at football?" I said, "Yeah." The coach says, "Right, can he come tomorrow?"
Oh,
So
right.
Ben played for the parliamentary 11.
Do they encounter any tricky opposition when they discover they're playing a load of MPs?
I think MPs versus journalists is quite an interesting one. And we did do an event at the Emirates Stadium once, which was the Parliamentary 11 played somebody at the end of the season when they were about to reseed the grass. So that way they could allow somebody else to play on it. And John Bercow came, and John Bercow's whole dream, his whole life, everybody thinks it was to be Speaker of the House of Commons. No, it wasn't. It was to go out in his football kit and play at the Emirates.
Oh, I can resonate with that.
And he rushed out of it like this.
So would John Bercow be in your five-a-side
Oh,
team?
yeah, John would be in it.
Are there any more front benches or back benches that you'd maybe include?
I put John McDonnell in it so he could complain.
Okay. So he'd be on the ref, would he? So.
He'd be on the ref the whole time. Ear ref, that's just not on. That's just not on. And then he'd quote the rule book back at him. It would be quite a while. You know, there'd be long gaps in the match while John's arguing with the ref. He'd probably get a red card.
Okay, I like that. Football in government. Is football something that can bridge the divide? Is it something that you talk about with opposition?
Yeah, there is quite a lot of discussion about the role of football. The divide between the Premier League and the Championship is huge. Divide between Championship and League One, League Two is huge, and so on. And the divide is getting bigger because the money is flowing into the Premier League, and it's not flowing in to the same extent to other clubs or to grassroots football. And so there's a very serious issue here. So the Premier League defend themselves saying, we're the best league in the world, we're even better than Spain, better than Italy, better than France. Well, Maybe they are, maybe they aren't. I don't know how you judge a league, actually. But it does mean that the amount of resources that go into grassroots football is not what it ought to be. And it's a failure to understand that football is something that can unite communities and people and teach young people a sense of collective and the team. Okay, most kids in school want to be a striker.
Yeah.
Because they're the ones who get the goal. But in reality, the strikers don't win games. Strikers get a pass that helps them to win the game, but it's the rest of the team that does it, always. And my eldest son, Ben, runs a London football school, and he has hundreds of young people involved. Saturday, Sunday evenings, and so on. What I see there is that sense of joy of collective action by kids. And they're kids playing together who wouldn't necessarily play with each other outside of football, but on the football pitch they do. So it does help to bring communities, different languages, different communities together, which has got to be a good thing, and also the growth of women's football. So I do think we need to do a number of things. One is to give fans more power in football. Arsenal, for example, the fans have no power whatsoever over the club. There is no process of election. There is Arsenal supporters groups which occasionally meet the club and the board and so on, but that's not the same thing. So I do think we need to look at the German model, where there's basically 51% ownership always not in the hands of the corporates. I'm not saying the corporates don't have a big influence. They certainly do in Germany, but it's not the same as here. And ticket prices in Germany are very low compared to Britain.
My team, Fulham, there's a £3,000 season ticket this year, which seems
3,000.
Yes, for the new stand. There's other examples. Obviously,
do you get a pillow with that or not?
I think it's a heated seat potentially, but the point is even Arsenal as well, well over £1,000 for a season ticket at the moment. A lot of the ideas that you've expressed aren't new. In 2019, you put forward 5% of TV revenue having to go back into the grassroots game. A lot of your plans were called, I saw by the Daily Express, communist, and they were pretty vigilant against the idea. I
think the Daily Express ought to think what communism actually is.
Yeah, well, of course. My point is, it was said, "Oh, you're trying to nationalise football," and it was kind of an absurd reaction to sentiments which today I think are even more prevalent if you look at sort of the money going into clubs at all levels. And actually, I was wondering, the European Super League, which that movement occurred during COVID. Did that validate a lot of your concerns about potentially where the direction of football is going under this kind of...
Well, the European Super League would have just killed off football in many ways. It would have turned the Super League into a series of very expensive exhibition matches around Europe where you'd see Barcelona play Liverpool, Real Madrid play Arsenal, or, Bayern Munich play Spurs or something. But at the end of the day, the matches would have been completely irrelevant because there was no promotion, no relegation. There was no real competition in it. What a ludicrous idea. And it was very interesting that it was a popular reaction against it that killed it off very quickly. And the apology level from all of the clubs that secretly got, they were all crawling over each other to give the biggest apology, weren't they?
Do you think politics can really influence football? Because the Premier League, as you've mentioned, is just a beast in itself at the moment. The reason it's the most popular is the TV revenue, the eyeballs on it. We're seeing, even across the football pyramid, American ownership going into Birmingham, spending lots of money on new players. Do you think that politics really can stand up to what some people might perceive to be the negative influx of money into the game? Because we've seen them successfully lobby to get betting sponsors removed from the shirts. The clubs have actually taken on themselves at the end of 2026 or 2025-26. They'll be removing betting sponsors of the shirt. That's because political pressure meant that it was going to happen anyway. We've got the historic football governance bill that was brought to the floor by the Tory party. Do you think that politics can actually influence the direction of where football's going, or is the beast too big?
The beast is very big, and the football clubs are very, very powerful. Much as I love Arsenal, when they came to developing the new stadium, they were actually bigger and more powerful than the local authority. And local authorities cannot compete with a powerful football club when it really wants something. David Conn wrote a very interesting, very thoughtful article in The Guardian called The London Borough of Arsenal to describe the whole planning process. Now, I supported the stadium and do, but I had concerns about the housing that went with it. There wasn't, in my mind, enough council housing. Some of it is far too expensive, and it is all about money for the football club. And so you get this sort of very wealthy clubs just basically controlling everything. Liverpool exactly the same with Stanley Park. Everton the same with Bramley Dock development. And so I do think there has to be a clipping of the wings a bit.
Apologies if you've heard a bit of building work in the background there. You've been a really big advocate for LGBTQ plus rights, and we need to see more on and off the pitch in terms of support. Do you think that we're getting to a point where players can feel comfortable coming out?
Almost. Not totally there yet, but it's certainly changed quite a bit. A number of players that have come out and the number of supporters that want them to, and themselves LGBT plus community. I think it's changing. I think society as a whole is changing on that, all to the better.
Do you think government, again, is that an area that it can involve itself to help that process move along?
You can't legislate for everything, but legislation sets a standard and sets a benchmark. The origins of race relations law in Britain go back to the 1960s. There was a huge rise of racism then. The government set down a Race Relations Act, which was very limited in powers compared to what we have now. Did it change everything overnight? No, but it gave a benchmark. It gave a certain authoritative status towards anti-racist activity, and that is absolutely crucial, particularly with the rise of racism feeding on the anti-refugee sentiments that go on. And so football can give strong messages and can be quite effective at that.
I think one of the biggest success stories of the last 10 years has been the growth of women's football, and Arsenal have been a huge...
They were the first, and it was Vic Akers who was the kit man at the club. And he's the one who managed the women's team for a long time. The club were obviously supportive in the sense they gave him the facilities and the time and space, but well done him and well done Arsenal for doing that. Yeah,
it used to be sort of Arsenal and Doncaster Bells competing with each other. Now it's almost a different ball game in itself.
It's every Premier League club.
Arsenal are hosting all of their home games at the Emirates this year. How happy are you to see that progressiveness within the women's game?
Oh, it's fantastic. When there's an Arsenal women's game on, it's easier to get tickets than it is for the men's team.
Yeah, it's true.
But it also means that you get lots of women going to the match, often with male partners, but also lots of children going. It's a lovely atmosphere. I live very near the ground.
That's true.
It's a lovely atmosphere on the day of women's matches.
All right, Jeremy, I want to just quickly finish on the current Arsenal team. Can they do it? Is this the year that they bring some silverware back to the Emirates? And how impressed are you with Mikel Arteta and his squad?
Very, very impressed. I think he's done really, really well. And I think, he deserves a lot of credit. He's had a lot of pressures and he's taken a lot of very bold decisions, which cannot have been easy at any stage for him. And I think he's done well. He's assembled a very good team, assembled a very young team, brought them all together. I'm slightly worried with the new signings that have come in. They came in late during the transfer window, so bedding in with the team, particularly with an international break, is difficult. And Odegaard's injury is worrying. But you know what? When a really top-class player is suspended or injured, sometimes the team does better because they've relied too much on that. I mean, Spurs relied on Harry Kane, just relied on Kane the whole time to deliver for them. Kane went, they started playing better.
Is this the year that Arsenal can finally eclipse Man City?
It is, but to be behind now is not a good thing.
Jeremy, thank you very much for coming on Football Joe today. I really enjoyed having you here to talk about Arsenal. If you guys enjoyed this kind of content, just like the video, subscribe to the channel. We're trying to grow Football Joe as much as possible. Jeremy, thank you again. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you. Really enjoyed it.